very shortly.
Okay, Mayor, the recording started. If you'd like, you can get a call the roll. Or I'm sorry, you can call the meeting to order rather.
All right. The meeting for November 2nd, Ypsilanti City Council is now called to order. Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Council, just as a reminder, when I read your name, please indicate your physical location. Councilmember Wilcoxon. Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Present, Ypsilanti, Washtenaw County.
Councilmember Somerville.
Present, Ypsilanti, Washtenaw County.
Mayor Richardson.
Present, Ypsilanti, Washington County.
Councilmember Morgan.
Present, Ypsilanti, Washtenaw County.
Councilmember Simmons.
Present, attending remotely from Ypsilanti, Michigan, Washtenaw County.
Mr. Jones Chance.
Present, City of Ypsilanti, County of Washtenaw.
And Councilmember Wilcoxon.
Present, City of Ypsilanti, Washtenaw County.
With all present, there is a quorum.
Thank you. Can we ask for approved agenda approval, please?
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved and properly second for the to approve the agenda. Do we need a roll call for this?
No, agenda approval can be done by voice vote.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Oppose? Did we
Council-
get a vote from everyone?
I believe so, yes. Mayor.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda is public comments. If any member of the attendees list would like to make comment, please raise your hand. You'll have 3 minutes to address council. The first individual in the attendees list with their hand raised is Andrew French. I'll allow them to speak now. You will have 3 minutes to address council.
All right. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. I'm just here to ask support from Council this evening for a feasibility study for a parking deck in Depot Town. As I know, many of you are aware, we have a parking deficit that was confirmed in a parking study that was partnered between the city and the DDA in 2018. Where we learned we have a 256 space parking deficit in Depot Town. Since that study came out, the Depot Town CDC has been working with the city, Representative Ronnie Peterson, Jeff Irwin, and Ricky Jefferson to come up with solutions to this problem. Right now, this parking study is an important step for us to find a way and find a path to bring some infrastructure into town to allow us to meet our current needs, as well as a lot of the growth that is coming, whether it's the summer jazz series, the trailhead at the park, events at the Freight House. There's a lot of exciting things happening that are continuing to put pressure on our parking situation. And this study is an important part to getting a solution. And part of this study, we have the Depot Town CDC has received a $30,000 grant from the state to go towards the study, and the remaining funds necessary is being paid from the Depot Town DDA. So it is funded, not using city dollars, and it is an important project for us to meet our infrastructure needs. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
Council, the next individual with their hand raised is Bob Krezowinski. I'll allow them to speak now.
Hey, good evening. Bob Twinski, City of Ypsilanti, Washtenaw County, also on the City Non-Motorized Advisory Committee. Speaking in favor of Resolution 242 tonight, the application for rectangular rapid flashing beacons from MDOT, and distracted driving is a horrible problem in not only our town, but in many across the whole United States. And anything that gets the driver's attention back where it should be, should be really helpful in this on this matter. And the non-motorized committee too, we have had this on the priority list in past years, increasing the rapid flashing beacons for pedestrians. And this current application is even better because it's data driven by the work that Bonnie did on this. So speaking in favor of that, also speaking in favor of the MDOT contract between the city and MDOT for non-motorized winter maintenance over the new Grove Road border-to-border bridge. It's very much needed because a good example of that is the Dixboro Bridge, also on the border trail. It hasn't been plowed in years, and a day after a snowfall there's tire tracks and footprints everywhere. It makes it for an even more treacherous walk across that bridge. So I'm very glad to see that winter maintenance is a priority with this project, and hopefully that will get approved and be done too. And the dream would be to not only have the bridge done, but considering maybe working with Washtenaw County Parks to have winter.
Did he drop?
Bob, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. It didn't, and none of that went. I thought I did.
About the last 10 seconds did not.
Oh, the last 10 seconds. That's all I'm saying is, that's all I had was support of those two resolutions. So.
Thank you, Bob.
Council, the next individual with their hand raised is Dan Duchesne. I'll allow them to speak now. Dan, you have 3 minutes to address council. You have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hi, I just want to introduce myself to those who I don't know. My name is Dan Duchesne. I'm up for appointment as a AHB officer in addition to Mr. Gilbreth. I was been a resident for the city since I think I moved in '04. Was a former member of the press, worked for Mr. Byers' office for many years before moving on to a different position. I was assistant city attorney most recently. And I just wanted to say hi and introduce myself.
Hey, Dan, good to see you.
It's good to see you, Mayor.
Thank you for speaking to us.
No problem.
Good luck, Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Council, it doesn't appear that there are any other individuals on the attendees list with their hand raised. However, I do have a comment provided by email from Reza Rajabi. And I will start the time now. In August, I went to the city properties inspection office. I asked Jenny, the administrative assistant, for 3 pieces of information. I watched her writing when I was telling her what I wanted. She said she would leave a note for Mr. Daniels that he could answer when he comes back to work in the morning. I did tell her that I really needed those documents the next day because I had an appointment with an attorney. When I showed up in the morning, she was not there and nobody in the office seemed to know what I was talking about. Mr. Myers came to the rescue. He got me one of those documents and he gave me a blank form of application for variance, what was not what I wanted. The third document was my certificate of occupancy for 3-2. Supposedly he couldn't find it, and without it, my meeting with the attorney would be fruitless. To prove the documents I was given were not what I wanted, I asked Mr. Myers to read the note from Jenny to see for himself that I was not getting what I wanted. He said they had thrown away the note. Really, Mr. Myers, how could it be possible a note written at almost 5 p.m. got thrown away the next day before being taken care of by Mr. Daniels the next day? I call this sabotage. So council, I do not see any other individuals with their hand raised. We can move on to the next section, which is a presentation by me. Share my screen here. Is everybody able to see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, well, council, I just wanted to give you a kind of a brief update on the 2021 redistricting process. I'll make this short. So the two areas of focus for today are the proposed plan and then just a strategy for public engagement. There's not actually a statute on how counties or cities are to balance, only that they must balance. Historically, the city has followed the state statute on how the state legislature seats are districted, MCL 4.2611D. That statute requires that the districts balance with a 5% deviation in population. This is the map from the 2010 census data. At that time, there weren't changes beyond that 5% deviation. So the election commission and city council decided to reaffirm the boundaries. So we've had these boundaries for at least 20 years. The 2020 census data produced a population of the city of 20,648. If that were to be distributed evenly among the 3 wards, that would provide for 6,883 per ward. A 5% deviation is 345 people in each district, giving a range balance of 6,538 to 7,228. Pretty much my goal as I've been developing this plan is just to ensure that there's no disruption to anyone's voting process. So this is how the current ward population breaks down. There was a pretty solid increase in Ward 1, a exceptional increase in Ward 2, nearly 1,000, and then a pretty substantial decrease in Ward 3. This is the precinct breakdown by population. The numbers in lighter gray are the populations per tract. And really, I'd like to focus on precinct 2-4 and 3-1. If you look at in 2-4, the southernmost census tract, that's 726. What I'm proposing is to move that into Ward 3 precinct 1. Just by doing that, we'll meet that 5% deviation. So this is an aerial view of that census tract. As you can see, it's only populated by those 4 student housing. And I was looking in the history of that. And during the 2010 census, those 4 student halls were being remodeled, and they were finished in 2011. So it's highly possible that that was not counted during that census, which is why that imbalance was created.
Mm-hmm.
So those 4 halls are Phelps Hall, Sellers Hall, Walton Hall, and Putnam Hall. And the total population would be 726 there. One issue could arise. If we do that, it does bring that population up to higher than 2,999. And state law prescribes that no voting precinct may have more than 2,999 active voters. It seems unlikely that even with just that change, that precinct would be increased past that amount, as that precinct currently only has 1,610 voters. So I was planning on shifting 2 census tracts from 3-1 to 3-3. And this is an aerial view of that. It's the western side of 3-3. There are 5 census tracts, and the 2 most southern tracts I would shift over to 3-3. Basically, my theory about how this will not interrupt voting precincts is the student housing is largely transient and isn't really accustomed to where their polling location is, especially in those student halls. However, they would still maintain that same polling location of EMU Honors College. So it wouldn't be a major disruption to that area. In terms of the two census tracts, I would shift from 3-1 to 3-3. They would maintain the same ward, so they would maintain the same voting representation on city council. And in terms of public engagement, I plan to hold 3 election commission meetings in the month of December, the first 3 weeks before we break for the holiday. At each one of these meetings, we'll have a public hearing. The first meeting, this plan will be presented. If there are any changes the election commission deems necessary after that first public hearing, that plan or this original plan will be presented at the second meeting along with a public hearing, and same with the third meeting with final plan adoption. After the election commission adopts that plan, it will be brought to city council for final adoption, the first meeting of January. At that meeting, we'll hold another public hearing. Council may either opt to adopt that plan during that meeting or request that there be further changes and kick it back to the election commission. The election commission at that time will schedule another meeting with a public hearing, present the amended plan, and then adopt it during that meeting. And then that meeting will be brought back to council for final approval. We're trying to get a good jump on this. State law does not require that this be approved until April 4th, but there are other things that we need to provide the Bureau of Elections. And also I want to begin to make sure that these changes are known by the public. I don't want to see any disruption, especially with the governor primary coming up in August of 2022. So I want to make sure that this information has been widely pushed out into the public so that it won't cause any disruption on voting day. That was my short speech. I'll answer any comments or questions. If you don't have any at this moment, I can always answer questions by email or phone.
Thank you, Mr. Linga, for a very good presentation. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Any questions or discussion?
Great job, Andrew. Looks pretty
Thank you.
straightforward.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. That was very thorough.
If there are no further questions, council.
I have one question.
Certainly.
Those numbers in each ward being no more than 2,999. Those numbers in Phelps putting them, are those student enrollment or are those registered voters?
So it's 2,999 active voters. So there are 2 ways you can be put on the inactive voter list. If you do not vote at your registered location for 6 years, or if election mail is returned, you're sent a notice and you have to vote in no later than 2 of the next general elections. So if you don't do that, then you basically, once we send that notice, you get put on the inactive list. After 6 years, you get put on that inactive list. And then if you don't vote in the next 2 general elections or one of those general elections, then your voter registration is purged from the state roll. So right now in 3-1, there's only 1,610 active voters. So it's very unlikely that it would be pushed beyond that 2,999 threshold. However, I would rather be safe and just ensure that we don't get there, because if we do get there, we have to split that precinct and have another polling location.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay, seeing none.
Council, moving on to section 6, the consent agenda. Resolved by the council of the city of Ypsilanti that the following items be approved. Resolution number 2021-237, approving the minutes of October 19th, 2021. Resolution number 2021-238, approving the appointment of an administrative hearings bureau officer. Resolution number 2021-239, approving the winter 2021 special assessments.
So moved.
There Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any questions or discussion?
Mayor, this is the consent agenda.
This consent, okay, seeing that, please call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Morgan,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes.
motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Council, moving on to the next item under resolution motions and discussion, resolution number 2021-240. Whereas it is necessary to acquire and construct certain improvements to the wastewater treatment plant consisting of replacement of the primary switchgear for the electrical supply to the plant, together with all necessary apparatuses and attachments thereto. The project to serve the city and the charter of township of Ypsilanti, the township. And whereas the contract has been prepared among the city, the township, and the Ypsilanti Community Utilities Authority, the authority whereby the authority will issue its bonds on behalf of the city and township to provide for the financing of costs of the project. And whereas this governing body has carefully reviewed the contract and finds that it provides the best means for accomplishing the project and for providing the needed services. Now therefore be it resolved that the contract is hereby approved and the mayor and the city clerk of the city are hereby authorized and directed to execute and deliver the contract for and on behalf of the city. Provided, however, that contract shall not become effective until the expiration of 45 days after the publication of the attached notice as a display advertisement of at least 1/4 page in size in the Washtenaw Legal News, a newspaper of general circulation within the city, which manner of publication is deemed by the governing body to be the most effective manner of informing the taxpayers and electors of the city of the details of the proposed contract and the rights of referendum thereunder. The city clerk is directed to publish the attached notice in the newspaper above designated as soon as possible after adoption hereof. All resolution and parts of resolutions in conflict with this resolution be and the same hereby are repealed.
So move.
Is there support?
Support.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Any questions or discussion?
Council, I do believe there are members from Yucca here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing no questions or discussion, was there anything that the representatives for Yucca wanted to share with us?
Hey, Tom, did you need to talk anything about the bonds?
Not unless there's a question. Again, this is a contract that is similar to the one that was actually brought to council last year. That contract actually included both the aeration blower and the switchgear, but after bidding, it was decided to split them up. The aeration blower was done earlier this year through the state's Clean Water Revolving Fund, and now we're bringing the switchgear project back. That would also go through the the Clean Water Revolving Fund. So the idea would be to sell bonds, YCWA sell bonds through that program. The estimated interest rate right now is at a 1.875%.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, council, seeing no questions or comments? Seeing and hearing none, Mr. Halenga, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Morgan,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
motion carries unanimously. Council, moving on to the next item. Whereas it is necessary to acquire and construct certain water supply system improvements consisting of the acquisition, construction, and installation of various water main and related improvements on Washtenaw Avenue between West Cross Street and Hamilton Street between Washtenaw Avenue and I-94, Huron Street between I-94 and West Cross Street, and Michigan Avenue between Huron Street and Hamilton Street, together with all necessary apparatuses and attachments thereto to serve the city. And whereas the contract has been prepared between the city and the Ypsilanti Community Utilities Authority, whereby the authority will issue its bonds on behalf of the city to provide for financing of the city's share of the cost to acquisition, construction, and installation of the improvements. And whereas this governing body has carefully reviewed the contract and finds that it provides the best means of accomplishing the acquisition and construction of improvements and for providing the needed services. Now therefore be it resolved that approval of the contract effectiveness. The contract is hereby approved and the mayor and the city clerk of the city are hereby authorized and directed to execute and deliver the contract for and on behalf of the city, provided however that the contract shall not become effective until the expiration of 45 days after publication of the attached notice as a display advertisement of at least 1/4 page in size in the Washtenaw Legal News, a newspaper of general circulation within the city, with manner of publication is deemed by the governing body to be the most effective manner of informing the taxpayers and electors of the city of the details of the proposed contract and the rights of referendum thereunder. 2, publication of notice. The clerk is directed to publish the attached notice in the newspaper above designated as soon as possible after adoption hereof. Reimbursement declarations. The city makes the following declarations for the purpose of complying with the reimbursement rules of Treasury Regulation 1.150-2 pursuant to the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 as amended. As of the date hereof, the city reasonably expects to reimburse itself for expenditures described in B below with proceeds of debt to be incurred by the city. B, the expenditures described in this paragraph are for the cost of acquiring and constructing the improvements which were or will be subsequent to 60 days prior to the date hereof. C, the maximum principal amount of debt expected to be issued for the improvements, including issuance costs, shall not exceed $11,900,000. Rescission, all resolution and parts of resolutions in conflict with this resolution B and the same hereby are repealed.
So moved.
Wow, thank you so much. That was quite a bit you read. Is there a motion?
Or
We had the
Hear support, but who made?
Anthony moved, I supported.
Okay, I didn't hear Anthony. Okay, thank you. Any questions or discussion from council? Mr. Morgan.
I had one question. I should have asked on the last one, but in my mind, I was wondering with the fee, with the principal payment structure from 2024 to 42, why do they increase so heavily when it comes to this breakdown? Could they have been flipped and have the initial investments or installments really robust and ease up over time? Or why couldn't it stay manageable at one round number? Or why does it grow substantially over time? Why this fee structure is what I'm asking.
So I'll answer that if Jeff, that's okay. What we're trying to do is there is existing debt that's already outstanding that the city has with YCUA. So we're trying to wrap that around to provide kind of level debt overall. So not just with this project alone, but try to maintain level debt service payments. That will basically ensure that the rates maintain some steadiness to them and that you don't have these big spikes. So if you were to just layer this, if you just put a level debt service in connection with this bond issue, you'd have some big years, whereas now you can structure this around the existing debt so that it's kind of level throughout. So that's why you see kind of that, you know, smaller payments earlier, larger payments in the back of principal, because we're trying to take into account existing debt that the city has to try to maintain a level payment going forward.
So usually new contracts are written with existing debt in them, as opposed to having a completely different country.
So the existing debt is already in place, right? So it already has its schedules set forth. So what we try to do when we have new bonds being issued for project is try to wrap that around there. So you look at it in its totality and you try to, because we can structure this debt around the existing debt, you try to maintain a levelness throughout the whole debt picture, not just the current one. Because you can't change the existing one because it's already been issued.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Wilcoxen?
Thank you, Mayor. So I had a similar question, but with the previous resolution, I mean, that's pretty easy. It's just, relatively small amount per year coming up there. But so what are the other debts that we have? There's the aerator that was last year. But that doesn't seem to make up the difference that we see between, the gradation for the switchgear and then for the improvements. And then the second question is, well, what are these improvements? Because the contract doesn't really explain what those things are. I take it that there's a lot of lead lines being replaced, but I also thought that we were getting some assistance in that through grants from the federal government to replace those lines.
Dwayne, can you answer the question on the existing debt? I don't have that information.
Yeah, that's over the last 3 or 4 years, we've had other wastewater projects. Scott can fill more of those in. I think the incinerator being the big one that was 2 years ago. But also what Tom was mentioning before, the bonds that drop off in the next few years are those bonds from 25 years ago. The main water main project that we did.
Gotcha.
So that's the biggest chunk of the debt that's going to fall off that we're working around. But there has been periodically wastewater plant debt's been issued over the last 5 to 10 years, minorly, or not a big chunk. But the biggest ones is definitely those water main projects from 25 years ago.
Yeah, that's correct, Dwayne. Those are the when the city paved all the roads and we did all the water mains in the local streets between like 2001 and 2005. So those are dropping off here in the next 3-4 years, I believe. Some of the specifics for this project are not only the water services, which are a big part of it, both in the right of way as well as between the right of way and the homes now that we have to do. Off the top of my head, I don't remember the exact numbers here, but there are, I believe, 40 some on the private side alone in these corridors, along with these water mains being replaced in these corridors. These are some of the oldest and most fragile, say, water mains in the city that remain in these MDOT corridors. So with MDOT coming in to do paving improvements, now is the time to get in and clean up these old pipes. Not just the main line, but the lead and non-copper water services too.
You said there's 40 private properties where the leads are from the street into the residents or the businesses are being replaced?
That is correct.
All right. But most of this is basically the water mains under all those streets.
Right. And there's a similar number, maybe a little larger, I believe, of lead galvanized services as well within the right of way. I don't have the number off the top of my head right now, I'm sorry, but it's a significant number in these 3 corridors in particular. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So is there federal funding for those galvanized replacements?
Not that we've seen yet, no. I expect that may come eventually through Michigan's share of the Rescue Plan Act. But at this point, what we know is that I don't believe the legislature has even started to consider how to spend those funds, let alone when and where and how. And the next piece that we see maybe coming is the infrastructure bill that's currently, I guess, in negotiation in Congress right now. And I don't know what to expect out of that one. The other grants and funding sources that are out there right now, the ones I've seen through the EPA don't look like they really apply to us that well. I don't think we're going to qualify for many of them with what's out there right now, unfortunately, but we'll keep looking, of course.
So this seems like this is an opportunity based issue. It's like we're already doing the water mains, we're going to have it torn up, we're going to do this. And from a city perspective, I mean, this is like that prioritizes those residences or businesses and doesn't give us as a body a real decision in terms of, you know, where we spend the money to do those replacements. And if there's 40 there versus 40 someplace else. And so I'm just trying to keep track of that. I've been watching this, you know, this has been going on for, since the 70s when they started granting for facilities and then moving out. But I really hope that the federal government gets on the ball and really does allow some of that money to be used for this purpose, because, you know, we've got a lot of houses that have the galvanized in it, and it would be good. And with, you know, things that have happened in Flint and Benton Harbor, you know, that's a significant issue. But it would be nice to have, you know, some idea of what the remaining lines are like and what's coming down the road, if we can
I
address
could
it.
chime in for a second here. Thank you for your questions. They're wonderful questions. So what we're actually talking about is lead service lines. And galvanized only needs to be replaced if the galvanized is or was connected to lead. Okay. So this is one of the unfortunate things is, you know, all utilities are responsible to replace the private side if there's lead service anywhere in between the water main and the home. So there could be a lead service in between the water main and the property line, or between the property line and the home. We're responsible to replace from the property line to the home, even if it's lead now. We always did replace lead if there was lead services between the water main and the property line. We've always replaced those during water main and road reconstruction projects. And that's what the city gets credit for the past 20, 30 years. When you did all those bonds, everything non-copper between the water main and the property line was replaced. And you guys should be commended on that, because we're far above most utilities in the state. However, what we didn't know and what you didn't know is that there was going to be a new rule created in 2018, which said all utilities got to replace from the property line to the home now. And that puts us back in there. So now we have to look at all our records and say, okay, how many homes on the private side have lead? We normally had good records from the property line to the main. And, you know, so from the property line to the home, you know, this is a critical time. We're trying to figure out where all this lead is at, because you may have owned a couple homes and you may have had your brother or a friend moonlight and replace that lead. We don't know that. But the significant thing is that we are responsible to replace all the lead from the water main to the home, and we have 20 years to do so. So, and all the lead services that are in place, let's say, for example, the city said, you know what, let's just do our water main project and let's put these leads and let's change these lead services down the road. That's not an option. Once you replace the water main, you cannot connect a brand new water main to existing lead. It can't be done. It'd be against the rule. So we're kind of in a predicament where we have to replace these, and it is unfortunate that there's not a lot of funding going on right now. But as long as we can stay focused on understanding that this is a rule, you know, the state is requiring all utilities to replace the private side, and we have the city and the township. And for right now, we're talking about the city, who did a tremendous job with all the road reconstruction projects. You really saved us a lot of heartache, but now we still got the heartache that's left over in between the property line and the home. You had questions for me?
I have a question for you. That was a question that came up in a meeting yesterday with Representative Dingle, and Superintendent Stumbo did say that the utilities company would be responsible for the lead, for the pipes from the home to the that lead to the home. And we were all doubting her, but so it's good to hear that she was. I'll have to call her and tell her she was right on. But however, you said that you had up to 20 years to replace those. So does that mean if those pipes are, if someone has lead pipes coming into their home, that you have 20 years? I mean, in 20 years, folks could be dead and everything else. Kids could be really in bad shape.
Yeah, that unfortunately, you have make a good point, but that is the rule. One thing about YCUA is we don't have a whole lot of lead like most other utilities. Now, I feel more so for the cities like Dearborn and Detroit, where they have tens of thousands and thousands of lead service lines. So it'd be impossible for larger utilities to replace these lead services in a timely manner. And if they did do it, it would increase everybody's water and sewer rates so high that you wouldn't be able to do it. So that's why they give you 20 years. And the goal is to replace, every utility had to submit a inventory list to the state of Michigan on what they think and how many lead services they have. With that, you have to replace 5% of that sum per year.
And if I can add,
Over 20 years, and over the 20 years, they got to be replaced. Go ahead, Scott.
yeah, if I can add that that inventory we submitted at the end of, I believe it was 2019,
Yep.
was a preliminary inventory, and we are still in the process of finalizing the inventory. There are, off the top of my head again, I believe there are somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 private side materials that we are still trying to confirm, and we have 2 years, just over 2 years to finish that list and get a final comprehensive inventory done for the state. And at that point, we will have a real good handle on how many lead services we have that we have to replace. And I don't think it's going to be anywhere near that 2,500 that right now are a question mark.
Right. I believe.
So
I
when
believe
will
that
you
lead
actually
service-
start replacing them?
We actually did several this year already. Some during the West Cross project. I believe there were 8 out there, if memory is correct. And we have done, I believe, a couple others on our own outside of that project, if memory serves as well. So we're somewhere, it's very early, but we've done 10 to 12, I think, total at this point.
And you say you have a couple of thousand?
We're in the process of confirming the last 2,500 to 3,000 between the stop box, the right-of-way line, and the home. And we've made tremendous progress in the last 2 years, because that number, I believe, when we submitted the preliminary list at the end of 2019, was about 4,700. So we've cut it in just about half.
Yeah, I believe that inventory list is due, the final inventory list is due to the state in 2025. But we've been replacing lead service lines since 2016. I've sat on the board with the DEQ, which is now EGLE, and the EPA. We knew this was coming down the pike, and we started replacing lead service lines immediately, a few on North River. So we've been doing our due diligence, and we're pretty confident that we'll be able to handle this.
So how will a resident know if they have lead pipes or not? Will they know before you come out to start making the changes?
Well, we have information on our website that tries to tell people and customers what to look for. However, when we find out you have a lead service line, we send you a letter. And we let you know that you have a lead service line and that we will be replacing it shortly or in the next duration. However, our projects occur. But no, we let them know that they have a lead service line, and then we give them information on, that they should probably flush their line when they use it in the morning, and so forth.
So you do give them precautions that they should take?
Yes, every customer that does have a lead service line that we know about, they have all received a letter already, and we've all given them I think it's a 2 or 3 page document on how to protect themselves from lead. And as time moves on and we're in the process of elimination and determining these unknowns, what we do is we have to go out actually to the property line with our Vector and pop a hole in the median in the grass to find the curb stop and see, and then we see what's on the public side and what's on the private side. And then we actually go in the house and identify what's at the meter. And then we discuss it with the homeowner and send them a letter.
Okay,
So
thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Any other questions or discussion?
Yeah, I have a couple comments.
Okay.
Forgive me for saying galvanized when I meant lead earlier, but
That's okay.
no, I've seen the letters that have gone out, and that information is excellent. And I reviewed the information at your website, and those tips and the videos and things like that are awesome. I was really surprised to find that comprehensive information at the website. Your point earlier that you've been addressing this and that the city has been taking this up, transferred the debt through you guys, of course, but I just want to, reiterate that this is something that's being taken care of. And so in light of news reports and things that things aren't getting done, I mean, you guys have been dealing with this. And just to reiterate also that this was an unfunded mandate from the state saying you need to do this, but they're not cutting loose any cash with it, and they're not doing any of the revenue sharing that they're supposed to be doing anyway. So, it's just one more way that the state is is kind of tying our hands with our budget and not really giving us any support in that.
Right, and if I could say one last thing, what's really important is everybody understand that when you hear on the news, you'll hear on the news that, oh, there's all these customers have lead in their water. They make it look as if the water is coming from the public side. So just to let everybody know, there is no lead in the water out in the water mains. All the lead comes from either the service line that leads to your home, and or if your home was built prior to 1988, and you have copper inside those homes, though that copper was assembled with lead-based solder. And if you have faucets that were installed pre-2014, each faucet in your home could have up to 8% lead. That's where all the lead is coming from. It's not coming from the public side. It's coming from the service line, either from in between the water main and the property line, or in between the property line in the home, or if you have copper pre-1988, it's got lead-based solder, or if you have faucets that were installed or you purchased prior to 2014, they have up to 8% lead. And that's our responsibility to try to educate all these customers to make them understand that we test your home because we're required to, but if you have a lead content inside your home, it's because of what's in your home. It's not what's in our water. But we get blamed for it, but that's our job. It is our job to educate you as a council, the township, everybody, and the customers to understand that. And we're going to do our best to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Castro. As always, concise, clear, and full of knowledge.
Thank you.
And your team. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate all that you have shared with us tonight. And so you're the one, so you are, you do have that information available on your website, or that regarding the faucets and things that are in the home?
Absolutely. You can go to our website and look at our lead site area, and it shows you what a lead service line looks like, what a galvanized service looks like, what a copper service looks like. And if you do have a lead service, contact us if we haven't contacted you yet, and what you can do to protect yourself, flush your service out and so forth.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there some way that Mr. Halinga, is there some way that we can make this information available to our residents that might possibly not know this, and even those that do not have access to the internet to go to their website? So
I defer to the city manager for this question.
Okay.
Those who do have computer access, it'd be as simple as the city just putting a lead link, and when you hit that link, it opens up our site.
Okay, we can do that. We can do that. Put a lead link.
Okay, and so how do we reach people that are not?
So I would say
computer.
I would say we could put it in our newsletter and make copies of our newsletter and distribute it in places that they might pick them up. Another way that we've done it in the past is we put these important announcements on the back of our tax bills, because most people get a tax bill. So we'll be looking at all of our public service announcements, our recycling announcements, things that are being mailed to residents, and we'll make sure that we put some kind of link in there. I'll try to be on the lookout for that.
If you would like to, if you do that, if you put it in the mail, if you would visit our site, and maybe there's some things that you like to point out and put on your mail out. If not, we can provide you with something that'd be very simple and easy to read.
Okay, I'd like that. I'd like that, Jeff. If you could provide me with something I can look over.
Okay, now is it possible for that information to be added to to the water bill? I mean, how everybody receives the water bill.
So that's really good information. So the lead and copper rule, as far as what our customers is, what we want to show our customers and your customers, your citizens, There's a whole lot of information on lead and copper. So I think not to overwhelm the customers is we need to send out something very simple, maybe a couple different times during the year would probably be the best option.
Okay. So Yucca could send those mailings out, maybe a simple mailing in with the bill.
Sure.
Yeah. That would be good, since you're
Yeah.
making doing a mailing anyway. Yes.
Yeah, I think the first mailing, what I would suggest is to apply pretty much what I just told you.
Right.
Don't get concerned about the water coming to your house. It's clean. It's the pipes under the ground in your yard, the pipes in your house, and the faucets in your house that you need to be aware of. And then the customers can decide, oh my goodness, this faucet has got to be from 1980. Let's get it replaced, because not every customer can replace their copper plumbing. Copper plumbing in a home is what you want. Unfortunately, they use lead-based solder prior to 1988, and that's a problem. So if we can educate the customer, then they can determine what they want to replace, or if they just want to continue to flush, but at least they know what to do.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much, all of you, and Mr. Castro and your staff. Really appreciate you coming, and as always, having lots of knowledge for us. Thank you.
You're welcome. Francis, was that you that we were talking together about lead and service?
Yes, it
Okay.
was. So
I'll
if you
keep in
can give
contact
me, okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. If no more questions or discussion, Mr. Halinga, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Morgan,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes, absolutely.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville.
Yes.
Motion carries with 7 yes votes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Council, moving on with the next item, resolution number 2021-242. Resolved by the council of the city of Ypsilanti, whereas the city strongly supports safe, non-motorized transportation and safe access to recreation opportunities for people of all abilities and incomes. And whereas the need for safe pedestrian routes of travel, and in particular crossings of trunk lines, is incorporated in the city's master plan, non-motorized plan, sustainability plan, and Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And whereas pedestrian traffic counts indicate frequent pedestrian use of existing crossings at Hamilton Pearl, Hamilton Ferris, and Huron Pearl. And whereas traffic crash data indicates significant need for a safer crossing at Hamilton Catherine. Now therefore be it resolved that the city council hereby requests that MDOT consider the installation of rapid rectangular flashing beacons at these intersections.
I'll move.
Or
Been moved and supported. Questions and discussion? Okay. Seeing no questions and no discussion, seeing no hands, hearing none, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Morgan,
yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Council, moving on to the next resolution, resolution number 2021-243. Resolved by the council of the city of Ypsilanti, whereas Washtenaw County Parks and Recreation generously constructed a much needed accessible shared use path along the west side of Grove Road Bridge belonging to the Michigan Department of Transportation. And whereas the state of Michigan is asking that the city commit to snow, ice, and debris removal on the shared use path, as well as other non-structural maintenance. And now therefore be it resolved that The city of Ypsilanti approves an attached non-motorized path permit between the city of Ypsilanti and the Michigan Department of Transportation, which commits the city to maintain this shared use path and authorizes the mayor and city clerk to sign the contract on behalf of the city.
I'll move. I'll support.
It's been moved and supported.
Who moved that?
Discussion?
Mr. Jones Chance.
Thank you.
Question, discussion? Well, if you haven't been out Grove lately to see the work that's been done, please take a ride out Grove Road. It really looks nice. I take it you've seen it, Mr. Wilcoxon. Yes, it really looks nice and something that was very much needed. And I'm excited and anxious for when we get the walk across 94 going up Hamilton and Huron. So, but anyway, Mr. Morgan, is your hand up?
It is. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, it is a beautiful portion of the city so far. What will it take to maintenance that annually? I know there was not many numbers. Is that because it's the first year and it hasn't been numbers accrued to determine what it will cost to maintain it annually?
So we've actually already done plowing that and maintaining that. We just haven't had a formal agreement. So when MDOT saw this permit come through, they put together the permit agreement. So this maintenance agreement. So now it's just going to be formalizing what we've been doing for many years.
Okay, but it doesn't have a number attached to it, like how many man hours, how much? Oh, okay, it's just open-ended. And this, is it from a date to a date, like from October to February? Is this open-ending every year?
It's open-ended every year. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Bonnie.
Any other questions for Ms. Wessler? Mr. Wilcoxon.
I don't have a question, but I just want to go back to what Bob was saying. As a cyclist who commutes all winter long on a bike, having that kind of maintenance on those kind of structures is really important. It is nice when you're fighting through the snow to get to a clear patch. It's kind of nice to not white knuckle it through that part. So I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxon,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Morgan.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Council, moving on to resolution number 2021-244. Resolved by the Council of the City of Ypsilanti, whereas City Council adopted the Ypsilanti Central Business District Parking Study and Strategy. And whereas said document notes a potential parking deficit of approximately 250 parking spaces in the Depot Town area, with the full utilization of all Depot Town commercial areas under demand shown at the time. And whereas construction of a parking structure is one potential route to satisfy parking demand. Whereas the Depot Town CDC has committed up to $30,000 for a parking structure feasibility study. Whereas the DDA has committed up to $30,000 in additional funds for a parking feasibility study and strongly favors the Fishbeck proposal. Now therefore be it resolved that the Ypsilanti City Council authorize the acceptance of the proposal from Fishbeck in the amount of $54,920 and authorize the city manager to execute the acceptance of the proposal on behalf of the city after approval by the city attorney as to form.
So moved.
Motion.
Or
It's been moved and supported. Questions, discussion?
Council, who made the motion again? I apologize.
I
It was,
moved.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, Any move, I support it.
Yes. Appreciate it.
Mr. Jones-Chance.
Yeah, I spoke with some of the members on the DDA and they were not, they were under the impression that half of the funding was coming directly from MEDC and not going through Depot Town CDC, so that was a surprise for them. It seems to me like this, if for that reason alone, needs to go back to the DDA for an approval. And I looked at the minutes from the Ops and Finance Committee meeting. It wasn't really spelled out in there. But from my conversations, it seems like they would probably like to see it come back. The other issue I have is after the parking study, how are we planning to pay for the structure? We're talking 250 spaces, on average, these things run between $27,000 per space. And with a smaller structure, if you're in that 250 and below range, it's more expensive. Not only that, but we're talking about building a large piece of car-centric infrastructure that maybe will pay for itself over time, but we're probably going to end up bonding out for at least half of it. I don't see the point of bonding out for a piece of infrastructure that's for a capital improvement that's probably not going to last as long as the bond issue. I guess I have some more questions about this. The feasibility study is one thing, but why spend the $30,000 of it's the DDA's money. However, that money comes at a direct cost to some of the businesses who, the building owners who pay taxes, and it comes at an opportunity cost for the city at large who doesn't get the benefit of those taxes because it's going into the TIF. So, I do want to know what is the plan for paying for this after the fact, and if anyone has any idea of that, I would certainly like to know before voting either way on this.
Okay, is Mr. Jacobs here in the meeting?
I am. Good evening,
Yeah.
Lois.
Good evening. Could you shed some light on the comments from Mr. Jones-Chance, particularly regarding where the DDA is on this particular item?
Surely. The DDA is open to bonding for part of the cost of the deck. That being said, we probably couldn't afford much more than $1 million bond with $50,000 available each year to pay for debt service on a 20-year bond. The one thing I will say in response to Mr. Jones' Chance comments is the parking deck, while we may speculate about its useful life into the future, is needed now. The very real challenge of parking is a present day burden for Depot Town in its continued growth. And every year that we neglect to address that issue, it really limits the growth and potential here for Depot Town. The next thing I'll say is that when we speak about DDA revenues, it's useful to recognize the tax capture comes from primarily county entities. The opportunity cost is not that the city would receive revenues that otherwise go to the DDA. Just as a point of clarification about the capture mechanism of where the DDA gets its TIF revenues. And speaking for the DDA, they were very clear unanimously at both the Operations and Finance Committee and the DDA board meeting about their support for the parking deck and about that as a very real need and challenge for the continued success of Depot Town. How we pay for the deck, I think that's a combination of sources. Part of it's DDA, part of it's the city, and part of it, the Depot Town merchants and property owners have looked to a special assessment to help pay for part of the cost. And so I think nobody's going to bear the entire cost of the parking deck. The city certainly probably has a role to play in helping support the cost of the deck. but would ultimately receive the revenues and proceeds from the parking deck. I can tell you also in conversation with the county, the Depot Town CDC has found a willing partner and somebody who's wanting to look at this challenge and help support it. And so those are my comments. I hope that they're useful in the consideration of what it is before you today, which is a really comprehensive look at the feasibility of a parking deck as a solution. And then we can address some of these long-term challenges of how to pay for it down the road. I don't think anyone is claiming to be there yet. But what I think we're asking for is the opportunity to continue moving forward in the pursuit of a parking deck if it's appropriate based on the study.
Thank you. And in part of the bidding process, were they considering sort of financial feasibility as well? I know that Ann Arbor's municipal parking plan, it doesn't just include structures, but has a lot more turnover than I think that we can reasonably expect in Depot Town. Will the feasibility study include financial feasibility as well? Or are we simply looking at engineering?
We're simply looking at engineering. I think that the demand was justified in the Rich and Associates parking study, but that has been largely stunted by the fact that COVID came and shut down all of our ability to bond on revenue projections. And that's really been a thorn in the side of moving forward on this with the revenue models reliably set.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that we would have an issue filling the spaces. My concern is, is ongoing maintenance, and then if it's not profitable, there's another cost on top of that as well. And really, can we fill the spaces? Probably. Will there be enough turnover to make it, profitable, or will we have an additional cost on top of maintenance? That's my concern. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Wilcoxon.
I believe Annie Somerville had her hand up for quite a while before I put mine up.
Okay, I don't see her.
Thanks.
Okay.
Sorry, I used the raise hand button. Thanks, Steve.
Okay, I didn't see it, yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I do think it's important to, if council, if there's enough support to move forward tonight, partly because we're going to be coming up on the next year to two where there's going to be a lot of federal and state money for infrastructure needs, particularly around EV charging. So I don't think it's in the best interest of us to miss out on opportunities if we don't have our ducks in a row. I also have, the same concerns about who eventually may pay for this, but I do think getting our ducks situated will open us up for the potential for federal and state funding. Part of the $30,000 that's going to the CDC is from the state of Michigan. And we won't know if we can get more from the state until we know if we can actually put a structure in Depot Town. So it's just an important part of trying to vie for other options.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Wilcoxon.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, we talk about parking shortages, but my question is, what is happening with you're talking about growing Depot Town. I was like, where is it going to grow? I mean, it has a confined space. There's a confined number of businesses. Unless they start encroaching on the residential neighborhoods, then what does that growth look like? We also have growth happening in other places in the city. We have developments on North Park, and we have developments. We want to have a development on Water Street, and so this feasibility study is only looking at that one spot. And with the cost of this, Mike, I brought this up during the public meetings for the Water Street development. It's just like, why aren't we having a parking structure there? It's 3 blocks from there to Depot Town, and it's 3 blocks from there up the hill to Michigan Avenue and downtown. And it seems to me that a feasibility study that includes all of the shortages would be better spent. You know, and I don't know why the DDA is focusing just on Depot Town rather than looking at the big picture and what we're going to do for all of that, unless they're planning on coming back with another feasibility study. But it didn't seem like anybody bid on that when I brought it up for Water Street. So, so those are two questions. What growth are you forecasting for Depot Town, which seems to be, you know, landlocked? And why doesn't this include downtown?
I have great answers for that, I hope. One relates to the 220 North Park development and the fact that that's not included in the DDA. And so when we look at a feasibility study, DDA couldn't help pay for that. Two relates to the question of growth in Depot Town. There are vacant, underutilized spaces in Depot Town now. We have 5 places that are really maxing out customers and many, many more that are not. There's great potential for Depot Town to still grow.
Mr. Morgan.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Jacobs. I just have a few. Oh, I'm sorry, Steve. You weren't done. Go ahead.
I'll go again after you're done. That's fine.
No.
Oh, Mr. Wilcoxon, you went on mute. That's why I thought you were done.
I was only on mute because I have a cough and I didn't want to.
I'm
do
sorry.
that. So I'll wait till Anthony's done. I'll come back.
Go ahead and finish.
As a point of order, I want to make sure you finish your questions. I only have a few comments.
All right.
So
Thank you. So the other question, why isn't this being looked at in terms of Water Street and in other parking solutions in light of the parking solutions for the entire city rather than just Depot Town?
Because the Depot Town situation is one within the DDA's purview. We have a capture that allows us to pay for a study. And the merchants and people who have paid into that TIF have been pretty clear over the last 5 years that they want to reserve their money to solve this challenge. They've socked away money every year to be able to pay for this. We're not pulling from DDA, reserves. We specifically decided as a board that this is a priority, and they're the ones who are willing to pay for the feasibility study.
So there's no businesses on Michigan Avenue that are talking about shortages of parking.
There's not a shortage of parking on Michigan Avenue, as identified in the Rich and Associates parking study. There's a problem of the most convenient parking not always being available, namely the one outside of my house on North Huron. If you go to Washington Street lot or you go to South Huron lot, they're rarely, if ever, full. You can find on-street parking. It's not the same thing at all in Depot.
So is there any education of customers in terms of intermodal or alternatives to just driving into our town?
Oh, certainly. But the broad appeal of Depot Town is one that is regional. We're not just pulling from folks in a 3 to 5 block radius who could otherwise get around other ways. You're talking about people from Canton, you're talking about people from Belleville, you're talking about people who otherwise couldn't get there without a vehicle.
Doesn't it speak to changing the nature of the appeal of the place to be putting up to me, it just changes the flavor of the place completely to have a big parking structure over next to the Freight House or wherever they're proposing to do that. But I'll be done. I know Anthony's got.
Thank you.
Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mayor. I have just a couple comments more than questions. And I do think, again, this parking feasibility study is not Ipsalani. It's not about Ipsalani feasibility parking. It's about a central ward, more of a region within our city, which is still, I think parking has been a historic issue and something that's, there have been some different studies based on this issue. So my statements are, I think we just sold a building, an EMU building that had a parking structure connected to it here, the school, the business here in Ipsalani. I don't know how many spaces that building had available, but we sold that building. We didn't use it at all to help solve the solution of our parking problems, which is centrally 1 mile radius from that building. And when we think about a study, I know we're gonna pay close to $60,000, whoever pays for it. I know, is it specific and unique to our individual landscape of Ward 3 Depot Town? And if so, are there any already blueprints or plans laid out that are similar that we can look to that would save us time and money? And I know with the 2045 projection of the AATA with transportation changing a little bit and how it's going to look and roll out in the next few decades over in our city, how that plays a part into what parking looks like. And again, I don't know how many spots are in the EMU structure, but we have a building sitting literally. So I know that's a separate things, but will the building look similar to what's right there? It doesn't look gaudy. It's kind of hid away, kind of down in the. So I'm thinking the seriousness of parking overall in the city and how it affects everything, including Depot Town. How much will it cost? Like you said, the feasibility of getting the study done versus actually creating it and following through on it. So how much did it cost to buy the building? Well, that's something separate, but I'm just thinking we gave up a lot of parking spaces to have the same issue. And if we're serious about parking, go ahead, Mr. Jacobs, I see you ready to respond.
Yeah, the city hasn't sold EMU College of Business. EMU has a purchase agreement with River Caddis for, I think it's $2.9 million. And that proposal is still pending. That hasn't gone through, keeps being extended. And River Caddis at one point came to city council and to discuss the parking deck and asked what the city's interest in purchasing it was. And from what I remember, the purchase price wasn't amenable to city council. And at the end of the day, the parking challenges are not in downtown, they're in Depot Town. And so you could use the shuttle. It's not to say that we couldn't get creative about it. We certainly could. But I don't think that's the highest and best option as determined by the Depot Town merchants and the folks, the stakeholders who are really affected by the problem. So I just wanted to be clear on where the EMU College of Business stands and what the history is with that as a possibility.
Do you know how many parking spaces are in that building, in that park? And are we using structure and decks anonymously?
Structure and decks are used synonymously. Bonnie, do you have the number in the deck? Because I don't have that off the top of my head.
I don't have that off the top of my head, no.
It's a couple hundred at least. It's fairly large.
That could potentially fill the need that could potentially fill the overall need for parking spaces, not just where they're located, correct?
If you were to implement a shuttle, it's a possibility.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Is your hand up? Okay. Councilmember Somerville.
I was using the raise hand feature again. And someone brought up growth and if Depot Town's gonna grow. And I know that Christopher had already mentioned that there's like underutilized space. Like there's a empty business below my apartment actually that's not being used right now that hopefully will eventually be used. But just in like the same context of like thinking bigger with federal and state infrastructure plans and needs to kind of adapt to the climate crisis. I have brought this up a few times with different folks. And I think that like, while we're thinking about this feasibility study for the parking structure, we should also think bigger about what can go above the parking structure, maybe housing, which is something that I'm really seriously interested in. So I don't think we should consider this as small as just a parking structure. I think we can think bigger and larger, just in terms of infrastructure and the housing crisis together as we prepare for the next 20, 30 years. I think we all know that more people are moving to Michigan for a reason. We are a safe haven state for the climate crisis. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I do think that there's still lots of space for Depot Town to grow both with businesses, but also if 220 is developed and then there's other spaces that could potentially be developed. There's businesses Frog Island Brewery's getting developed right now. So hopefully a year from now, that's an active business. So there's a lot of growth happening. We just don't see it right now.
Thank you. Any further discussion or questions? Is your hand up, Mayor Pro Tem Brown?
No, mine is.
Okay, Mr. Jones Chance.
Yeah, do we have, or could DDA come up with some kind of a plan for financial feasibility as well? You know, I'm really concerned that this is going to be like a 2.0 of another bond issue, and I would just, you know, I'm really concerned that we don't have the turnover to make that work. And to Mr. Wilcoxon's point earlier about Water Street, you know, we did ask the developers about that, and they said no, it wouldn't pay. And developers don't like building them because they don't. It's a really lousy investment. And, you know, the last person who bought a building with one tried to offload it on us. You know, I understand the acute need at the moment. I mean, obviously, I'm one of the people with the need, but that doesn't necessarily translate to additional costs over time, additional debt, with or without federal funding. I don't think it's going to cover all of it or enough of it to make up the difference. So, you know, if we approve this, I would like to see some kind of financial feasibility. Because I mean, I can see where this train is heading, and it's to, we did a feasibility study, it's gonna cost X, here's how we're gonna pay for it, and no one ever talks about long-term, we never talk about the bond issue, we never talk about what happens if it doesn't get paid, or additional millage if it doesn't get paid, and, you know, that's not gonna work. So I would like to see that.
I can commit that as the DDA, we would look to put together a plan for the revenue side of things. I think of it like the Penn Dam. We recognize that this is an immediate need that we have to figure out. And there are a lot of creative ways we could fund for it. But there are things we need to do right now to be able to access that grant funding and other solutions in the future, like special assessment or revenue bonding, or any of these other options. So I don't claim to have all the answers. I can tell you first and foremost on the minds of the stakeholders in Depot Town will be solving that financial puzzle. How you put that together, whether it's state allocations, revenue bond, a combination of funding sources. So I don't have that exact mix right now, but that would be the very next step after determining where the most appropriate location, how big the debt can be, because that would determine what the cost is. Right now, we just don't know whether we can build a 200 space deck or a 300 space deck. So we have no idea what it'll cost. And for the city at the current moment, the decision, you may not like how the Depot Town CDC and the DDA spend their money in pursuit of this goal, but there's still another point at which to pull the plug if you don't like what you get back in terms of the answers concerning revenue or the answers concerning the feasibility of a deck.
I'd like to call the question.
Or
Would you call the roll, Mr. Halinga, please?
On call the question, Mr. Jones Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxon,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Somerville,
yes.
Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Morgan,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons.
Yes.
Motion carries. On the resolution, Councilmember Wilcoxon,
Can you come back to me?
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Come back to me.
Councilmember Somerville,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Morgan,
No.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Jones Chance,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
Yes.
motion carries with 6 yes and 1 no.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Jacobs. Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Mr. Jacob.
And thank you, Ms. Wessler. Appreciate the work both of you do. Moving on with the agenda.
Council, the next item on the agenda is in board and commission communications. The Arts Commission passed a resolution requesting the implementation of a community and artist survey for the Ipsalani Art Commission Action Plan and a request for qualifications for the community and artist survey outreach consultants. So council, if there is support from either the mayor or 2 council members, we can prepare an RFL and resolution to appear on the November 16th.
I will support this communication.
I'll
This
support it too.
resolution.
Okay, this will appear on the November 16th meeting for approval.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next section, board and commission liaison reports. The first commission is police advisory.
Thank you, Andrew. Really quickly, the meeting just took place last Thursday. And what was on the agenda mainly was the discussion between oversight and advisory, in which the commission, and when it was started, I believe just being a advisory board, and I don't think we have power to do more than that, but it definitely straightened some lingo out with our scope of powers and what they're capable of doing. And I just want to thank the council for the 2 resolutions that YPAC did bring about the phone calls and about resolutions 2021 230 about expungement, and I believe phone calls. And now I believe that the YPAC is getting some traction on what their again their scope of power and influence is, which is very encouraging. And I wanted to mention, yes, I believe, yes, so that's what I wanted to mention. Our next meeting is in December sometime. I think it's the 3rd weekend. So I don't have any more than that, but that's what's going on in YPAC. Thank you.
So you're not going to meet in November?
Well, okay, this is November 2nd. I'm sorry, I'm still thinking this is October. I'm thinking this is November 2nd, so I believe it's the 3rd weekend and the 3rd Thursday.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know what date that is, but thank you.
Thank you.
Council, the next item on the agenda, I apologize. The next body is the HRC.
The November meeting hasn't occurred as yet, so I'll report out once that happens.
Arts Commission.
Oh, wait, Mayor Pro Tem Brown was there an October meeting? Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm sorry, I'm talking I'm not mute, not unmuted. I sent an email, but I've had email troubles. I just found out this week. So therefore I believe it was in my draft. So I will resubmit.
Okay, thank you.
Next is Arts Commission.
I have no update.
Then the next 2 are Parks and Rec and Sustainability.
Sustainability is next week, and Parks and Rec hasn't happened this month either. So get back to you next time.
Next body is the HDC.
Nothing to report.
Next 2 are Planning and ZBA.
ZBA has not met. Planning commission meeting was routine.
You say the planning meeting was what?
It's routine.
Routine? Meaning,
Nothing special to report.
okay, thank you. They didn't do, okay. Did you have a quorum for the meeting?
Yes, they always meet.
All right, thank you.
Council, moving on to the next section, liaison reports. The first report coming from SEMCOG.
Nothing to report.
Next is Watts.
Yeah, and there was a meeting about 2 weeks ago, but I don't think there was anything really dramatic to report. So it was routine.
Urban County.
The meeting's tomorrow.
YDDA.
We have a special board meeting on Tuesday to approve grants for the Match on Main program.
And finally, Friends of Rutherford Pool.
Next meeting is tomorrow night, so I will report on that at the next meeting.
Wow, I can't believe that. We've gone through both of those two like very quickly. Very good. Okay.
Council, the next item on the agenda is council proposed business.
All right, thank you. I'll start with Mayor Pro Tem.
Nothing tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple things. Well, first I want to give a shout out to Steve Pierce and the Ipsy for third place winner in the DTE Business Pride Contest, saving old buildings with energy efficiency, and the different upgrades and upkeeps that he's done to that building to keep it functioning and economical. I believe we received some grants, and I believe the building, especially in the summer, is pretty engaging. They let a little pop-ups come up, and so I think I just want to give kudos to what Mr. Pierce and his wife have been doing over there. I want to say thank you publicly to the Ipsalani Community Schools. I was not able to attend the exchange between the city and council and the school board, but it looked wonderful. I want to thank my ward mate, Andy Somerville, and I want to thank Steve, Mr. Wilcoxon. I saw you holding a check, and again, our city manager for receiving the check. And I wish everyone else could have been there. Again, I didn't make it, I was out of town, but I thought that was a great vision for people in the city to witness. And I want to talk a little bit about just about ordinances a little bit. I know I was working with some citizens on Maple Street about some furniture on their porch. And I know certain, they were getting citations and how ordinance read, what trash was, what clutter was, what litter was. And so and I was looking to get more information on it, but I'm not a lawyer and I don't play one on TV, but getting some information about, I think when we have those ordinances about the definition of how they read, like say if there was something talking about a couch should be enclosed, and if that couch is allowed to sit there for 6 months without being cited, I'm sure a citizen may believe that they had the right to keep it there. And then one day after 6 months, they get a citation for it. It's just not clear on the interpretation of why they had it there so long or the use of it. Or so some things got to be cut and dry, but I don't enforce ordinances, but I do think there's a inconsistency in our enforcement. And lastly, I want to say, I know with the redistricting and things of that nature about this new ranked choice voting, I'm really interested in seeing how this new way of choosing elected officials and how redistricting and how these different structures are going to coincide together, and how it's going to affect some of our seats here in the city in the work that we do. But I just want to say thank you to everybody here on council, and I'm glad we moved through. No more business. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Simmons.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Akers. I sent him a message about, an issue, and he just responded so quickly. So again, I just wanted to say thank you to him and his staff for their quick response. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Jones-Chance.
Nothing much to report. Work on affordable housing and violence continues, and we should have some developments on those in weeks to follow. Nothing else to report.
All right, thank you. Mr. Wilcoxon.
The only thing I want to say is I wrote a summary of the progress on Penn Dam for the newsletter for November, and that should be coming out soon. So that information is there. Looking forward to hearing, seeing the reports from the engineers and the studies on sediment toxicity. I think I reported at the last meeting that the town hall that was originally scheduled has been postponed until we get all that information, because the Public Engagement Committee decided that that was a significant piece of the puzzle, and that was what people were really wanting to hear. You know, there's lots of progress on the other parts of the project, but the clincher was really the chemical profile and sediments. And so that doesn't have a date. As soon as we get that information, then we'll schedule that. And our consultant has the contract for the consultant for the facilitation is based on deliverables and not on a timeline. So she is on board for having that meeting when that information becomes available. It looks like that's going to be either in December or early January. So, but those details are in the city newsletter. So,
Thank you. Ms. Somerville.
Yeah, I just have one item. I wanted to nominate a constituent of Ward 3, Jeff Meyer, to the HDC. He applied, I think 2 weeks ago. No, I got it in my email.
I got something from him too, I believe.
Yeah, I can pull it up.
Oh, no. I was thinking of a different name. Yes, it's MUIR.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone is interested in supporting that.
absolutely. I thought he
Okay.
was already on, had already been nominated.
No,
Okay, yeah, no, I support that.
okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
That, I think that's all. I'm excited about the warming center. And I do just want to thank the city manager and Tom, and Bonnie. We, wearing my other hat, they allowed us to host a constituent pop-up event with some other community stakeholders, and the city participated to get some information out about public input for the city near the transit center. So I got to wear both hats and help get information out on a number of things like rent relief and expungement, which we just approved some funding to partner with the county prosecutor's office. So they're already at work trying to help folks in the city of FC get their records expunged. So it was a good event, and I'm thankful that our city manager was able to help with that, as well as staff.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I think that brings it to me. There were, okay, I have several things. One, I guess it's been about a year ago now that when the incident or the issue arose at the police department with the officer there, we asked for, from the table, we asked for an outside investigation of the police department. And I think at another meeting recently, it was a meeting with a few people from community and the police chief and the city manager, that request was made again. I just want to know, can we have an update on where that investigation is? Would like some information just to know where it is, what we're in the midst of the process.
Mayor, if I could I answer you on that? Council needs to make a resolution directing me to do an investigation and to state why. I can't just simply do an investigation. So there is no resolution on file where council has passed a resolution for me to do so. So if you ever want to entertain that, I'd be happy to move forward with
Okay.
that, but that is what I would need.
All right, thank you. I wish I had known that a year ago.
I did say that. I did say that to you.
I never received that information, but thank you. I will work
Yes, I
on,
said it.
appreciate that. Okay, thank you. Nor did I receive that. Did I hear that in the second meeting that we had recently? So, but I will work on that. Thank you. Okay, there was a request for a speed gauging machine on Ainsworth Circle. And the resident there called me back again asking for that. There's lots of speeding in the circle. I know we put speed bumps on Ferris, but none in the circle, and there is a real request for that in the circle. There's lots of speeding. In fact, there's speeding everywhere, but lots of speeding right there in Ainsworth Circle. So if we could get that measured and then begin to look towards their requests for speed bumps in the spring. Okay, want to congratulate Jennifer Goulet and her GLOW committee for another successful GLOW night, even in the midst of the rain. Understand some of the festivities and the displays were absolutely spectacular. I did attend the Ipsalani Ipsalani School, YCS Foundation, had a time of cider and donuts at the bank. And I attended that. That was a very nice, nice event. And so just want to, and then attended the concert there at in the Freight House, and it was really a very nice concert. I also want to congratulate Mr. Pierce. I don't know if he sent his the notice to all of us, but I did receive one. Got a notice, and just echo Mr. Morgan about the acknowledgement and the recognition that Mr. Pierce got for the building there. Also, the trunk or treat at Park Ridge on Saturday was very successful. There were any number of cars out there, any number of children out there, and youth of all ages. They had a large screen, and so they showed the Michigan State game right there. So there were a number of people that were watching the game and passing out treats and all. It was really a nice event. However, because the ground was so wet, there was considerable damage and ruts to the park, the ground in the park. So if we could have someone to look at that, would appreciate it, and get that, because there's some ruts that are really quite deep and will need to be filled in. So if we could get someone to take a look at that and see what it's going to take to get it repaired. So, thank you. That's all that I have for this evening.
So the next item on the agenda is communication from the city manager.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. First, I'll just address some of the things that the mayor brought up. Ron has been given permission, our DPS director, to place a speed monitor on South Ainsworth, on West Ainsworth or Ainsworth Circle. So we will get with him to see when that will happen. That request was not ignored. And then you're welcome. And then when it comes to the request for speed bumps, we'll address that when we get to it, because the city does have a policy.
Right.
So we'll work with that when we get that in the spring.
Right.
Okay, next, the city has adopted a COVID vaccination policy, and we recently distributed to department heads. I'd like to report that our CAFR is almost completed. I've completed my manager's executive letter, And we should be all set to go with that very soon. Our auditors have left the building. And so we anticipate to have a clean audit. I want to welcome Dan Duchesne coming back to the city of Ypsilanti. And as far as investigations of the police department, investigations currently are conducted upon a complaint basis. So we can't just do a witch hunt. And so I've discussed this also with Mr. Barr several times, and he suggested and recommended that council pass a resolution pretty much stating, what the investigation would entail and how we would pay for it. He suggested that we use a third party to do this. So if city council is interested in moving forward, I can do that of myself, but that would have to come by resolution of city council. So that's my report on tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, there are no other items on the agenda, so this will lead to the adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
So move, support.
Meeting is hereby adjourned at 8:46. Everyone
We didn't
have a
have
good evening.
We didn't have a second public hearing, no? Public,
No,
No.
we don't on,
Not with the virtual.
not on Zoom.
awesome.
Yeah. So.
Sad.